Andy, it's great to talk to you. You had a roller coaster ride of a game. Is there one word you would use to describe your journey watching it all back?
Wow, one word. Chaos. It was chaos is one word, but it was the journey of a lifetime. I could never have predicted that would be my experience, but I think it's really important when you're on Survivor to just be vulnerable to whatever the experience is going to be and be authentic in the moment. And I can look back and it's just I'm so grateful and I feel very fulfilled by having that full, well-rounded journey because I can use that to grow and learn and I'm taking that with me going forward.
Yeah, you really had the full range of everything out there. Can't wait to dig into it. I want to talk about your exit. Were you more surprised that Rachel pulled out an idol or that she used it to idol you out?
I was quite surprised that she pulled out her idol. We were already playing fast and loose. We knew that she had a block of votes, so if we couldn't split the vote, there's nothing too much we could have done. But when she was sitting with me and Sam on the beach, she was like crying these tears of frustration. I just kind of looked at her closely, and I'm like, she thinks she's going home. Like she doesn't have an idol. That was my perspective on it. But when she did whip out the idol, you don't have too much time to process that. But I also thought that she would not vote me out. I thought that the way that she viewed us, even in the aftermath of Operation Italy, was that she put Sam way above me in like a jury stock or threat level hierarchy. And that's kind of what informed my decision to like talk with her just to make up some ground. I in no way, shape, or form did I think that I overtook Sam as a threat to her. So I was very surprised on all fronts.
Yeah, let's talk more about that conversation because that really seemed to move the needle in her eyes. But to you, that was just like a little bit of jury management. Tell me about your thought process in that moment.
So that whole day was pretty strange because we were telling Rachel she was going home. There was like a whole laundry list of reasons for that. I was trying to like play my options. My plan A, if had Genevieve not won immunity, was to swing back with them in truth and vote out Genevieve, because she was a massive threat in her own right, but she had won immunity. And then when Rachel first pitched me to vote for Sam, the one thing she said, by the way, Andy, if you lie to me one more time and you vote me out, Sue and I will never vote for you on the jury. And that is like a threat with some risk, but like I was the perfect mark for that. And it just worked on me. I was like, I can't afford that. And so that led to some truth telling, you know what I mean? And if we're telling her the truth, I also want to plant seeds that I am playing a game that is maybe deeper than what she currently perceives because she, from my perspective, is going to be a late game juror going to the jury, confirming all these negative suspicions about me that I didn't have long term strategy, the blah blah blah, that I was like just like this impulsive flipper. I had a kind of an idea of dispelling all that with the really strong, hopefully final tribal council. But I also felt like that wasn't going to be enough. And it was gonna take more time and space to turn around that perception of me. So I really wanted that seed planted in her head as she went to the jury. And so it was a gamble that did not pay off.
Yeah, I want to give you the space. What would that pitch have been to the jury if you had one of those final three chairs?
I think the number one rule of Final Tribal Council, you have to own every single inch of your game. And I think some of the most successful Final Tribal Councils that we've seen recently, it's someone who demonstrates self-awareness, the understanding how people have perceived them. And that's something I had unlocked. I also wanted to play an end game in such a way, starting with Operation Italy, but then all the way through the rest of the rounds, that if nothing else, just proves agency, proves authorship, that I am paving my way through this game on my own terms, and I'm making moves that benefit me. Um, and all that would be a concoction where it was like, you know, they can look at me as a flipper, but flipper has this negative connotation. But if nothing else, that person is doing something in their self interest. And so I wanted to basically just own everything. Be like, yes, you looked at me in this way. I know that's how you look at me. That was a feature and not a bug to a large extent in my game. And I adapted to like a very terrible start. And that's like was my macro strategy got through me the game. And then in terms of loyalty, I am the biggest snake like ever. Like I am one of the biggest snakes in Survivor history, and I own that. And I was not loyal to any of you. And I went this way, and I went that way, and I went this way, and I that went that way because that was my strategy, with the hope that you put all that together, and you know, uh, a jury listens to that, even if they're not predisposed to like you or respect you or whatever. They would have to be like, well, he's right. Damn, like he's got some points. That was my sort of my idea behind it.
Yeah, and you were able to build that game after what you said was quite a difficult start. What do you think was really what made that start so difficult? And what was the biggest factor in you being able to adapt on day four and really change things?
Yeah, it's a great question because I feel like I came in with a really good positive mindset. Like I felt like I was like, my life is so good back home now, and like I've made so much growth in my personal life. This is just gonna be like this additive culmination of that. I'm just gonna be free, and I'm just gonna do my best and live out my dream. And on day one, I felt like I had a pretty good start, but it was in the middle of day two, something just like I don't even know what the specific inflection point was, but I just like really it really started to dip, and it felt like every hour was getting worse than the previous one. And it is like there's no doubt that it was like a spiral in any way you want to define that. And it back home, like I have anxiety and stuff, but I also have coping mechanisms. I could bring someone aside who I love and trust and like talk about it and bounce back. That didn't work out in Survivor because Survivor is a complicated game, and Rachel only met me the day before, and it just that didn't work out right. So um, it was pretty startling, and God, it was a little bit scary how quickly that was like happening, and it culminated in that very physical challenge. So then I had heat exhaustion, and I was feeling like truly delirious from that. And so it was like this perfect storm, and it was yeah, it was quite bad, right? But I feel like even by the time I got back from the challenge, I had like got my wits about me again, and I just like did everything I could to push through and take part in that scramble and survive that first tribal council. And then when I woke up on day four, I just like it was a very clarifying thing. I was like, this has already gone as bad as it could go, but I'm still in the game that I love and I'm still here. And like, let me just have a new mentality going forward. And it's like, let's start having fun with it and let's start just like being very present on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a fan, like watching all of these years of the game, you see so many players who get themselves into a tough spot and then have that dig deep ability to get themselves out of it and totally rewrite their game. Was there any like inspiration you took from past survivors or past like reality TV players where you're like, if they could get out of this, I can get out of this?
That's a great question because there are a lot of survivors who have had massive comeback stories. One of my very first favorite players is Aubrey, and she had a sort of a bad start, not quite as explosive as mine, but a bad start, and she had a big comeback. David Wright is another one. And Chrissy Hoffbeck is another person who like I've been huge fans of all these people, not knowing that I was going to have a journey similar to theirs. So I really drew inspiration from them. But I'm a huge reality TV fan, so there were some deep cut people also in my head in terms of strategy and how to adapt and how to use a perception to your advantage. There's this one guy who played on Big Brother Canada, and his name is Kevin Jacobs, and I used him as a big reference point strategically in terms of how to dig myself out of that hole and use everything to my advantage, whether I'm doing it on purpose. Like if something bad happens at a challenge, I didn't plan that, but let me use it. And so, yeah, that's what I was drawing from.
That's awesome. Now we have to talk about Operation Italy. It was like the moment of the season. First, I have to get out of the way. Was the Italian job considered as a name?
It was considered 5 minutes in. We spent so much time talking about Operation Italy. The beauty of it was that we had like 8 hours to talk about anything, and we spent a lot of it talking about the name. Italian Job was one of the first ideas we had, but it was just not meant to be. You know what I mean? And so we had to come up with other options, and Operation Italy it was the right sweet spot because we came up with like crazy, like wild names, out there names. Operation Italy is like, this is simple enough. It sounds cool enough so that if this move is like really awesome, it will stick in people's heads.
Oh, it certainly is sticking. Now, where did the first kernel of that idea come for you?
Yeah, the impetus of that, I think it started when I felt like I was in a good position in the middle of the merge and I had all these options, more than people were giving me credit for, right? But then this alliance crystallized the Underdog Five. Now, I had been working on a Final Three with myself, Rachel, and Teeny, which was good. And I also had some ties to Caroline and Sue that were not developing at a fast pace, but were kind of there. But when that alliance came together, I had a bad gut feeling about it because I just had this instinct that game wise, this is not the right end game configuration for me. It takes all these options I have and whittles them down. And all of a sudden, if I'm at the final five with these people, I don't think I have short term safety, and I don't think I have a path to garner jury votes if I get to the end. So you either have to ride as five-person lines out, or you got to do something about it while you can. So I woke up on the morning of that Sanctuary Award. So the morning before the challenge, I woke up and I was like, if I had it my way, my best plan would be to swing to Genevieve and Sam and like do this like plurality option, but it's gonna be impossible to implement. It's just so difficult. Like there's no way we can get that together in a scramble. And then when the reward happened, and it was me, Sam, and Genevieve, and we had all of a sudden the entire night to ourselves, that's when it really clicked. And I'm like, this is the opportunity. Passing this up would just be a huge, huge, huge mistake. And it was born.
Well, there you go. And then history was made. So, coming out of that, it's still a 3 for 3 with the people that were in Operation Italy and the people that were left outside of it. And Rachel has the block a vote. Were you worried that that could mean that one of the Operation Italy people would be going home, or were you confident that you could pull Teeny?
So, like I said, I feel like we accounted for every single detail because we had so much time and we were all in on the plan. So, if we have like 8 hours to talk about this plan, we're thinking about everything and we're not just thinking about the final seven, we're thinking about final six scenarios. Now, the beauty of targeting Rachel is that the block vote just disappears, right?
Right, right, right.
We already thought about the idea. Well, she is good at immunity challenges. We already thought about that possibility. So, in the contingency of her winning immunity, yeah, Caroline would be the right target, but we would have to deal with the block and vote. We just recognize that if if we upend the power structure of the underdog five, Teeny will be someone that we could potentially swing to help us at a final six round. And the way that worked out was really interesting because when we go back to camp and start enacting Operation Italy, I have a really interesting conversation with Teeny at the well where they're like, I want Sam out. I want Sam out. But if Sam wins immunity, I want Rachel out. And I was like, oh, I was like, this is interesting. This gives us a few more outs. If Teeny really is like feels like Rachel needs to go as well, you'd have to ask other people involved. But I think from my perspective, like Genevieve had planted that seed that Rachel was unbeatable in Teeny's eyes. And so just in my head, it just seemed like first of all, we have to get rid of this underdog five power structure. But if we do, we can play our cards right and get Teeny on board. And the way that it actually happened was honestly some of my of course I feel bad like on Teeny's behalf, but like it was very fun just on a like a gameplay level to kind of improvise in a way to set up, but also improvise the things we were going to tell Teeny to continue the smokescreen of Operation Italy. And once it was clear that we had secured Teeny, that's when I felt like Operation Italy was like a real success.
Now you've had this whole journey on Survivor. Let's say you get the call for a future season. What energy are you bringing into that game on your second chance?
Oh, it's so interesting. Like I said, I'm a big fan. So like I know about like the precedents of All-Star seasons. It's really interesting because there's no way I could play the same game because I think the crux of the game that I played was um, exploiting people's underestimation of me. I just don't think I could go into 50 or any season, potentially like with that game plan because that's all on the table. Everyone has seen Operation Italy, for example. I guess hypothetically, I would try to utilize the same strengths I've learned. You play Survivor once, you have a good idea of what your strengths and weaknesses are. So like have that awareness and play to my strengths. But I guess pragmatically, it would lead to a completely different game if people have this reputation about you. I think the number one thing though, the number one thing is I played Survivor 47 in a very, very, very disloyal manner. That's just like the facts. Um, it has its pros and cons, but like it can only get you so far unless you play it exactly right. So I think it would be amazing to have like some real allies that I wouldn't just flip on at the drop of a hat.
Genevieve, you played like a truly powerhouse game. It is so great to talk to you. And fifth place is not shabby at all. How are you feeling watching your whole journey back? What's the swirl of emotions?
Uh, well, I hate watching myself, period, on TV or like anything. I'm one of those types of women, but I have loved watching it back because now that I've played with these people, like majority of the cast are good friends of mine. So like I love watching it and being like, yeah, like, you go Gabe or you go Caroline, because now I'm friends with them. So that's been fun with watching it back. And I feel like I I've been blessed by like my fairy godmother of like some nice edit because I'm just like acutely aware of all the terrible things I did, all the mistakes I made or like dumb things I said. And I feel like it made it look like I'm so good. And I don't know if I'm sorry, Stephanie. I don't know if I'm that good.
I like the humility, but you did play a great game. Let's go into that final tribal council that you were at. You see the two Sam votes, the three Genevieve votes. As you're walking out, what is your perception of what you think happened there and why the votes went the way they did?
So I have the benefit of being able to say I knew where the majority of votes were going at every single tribal council, including the one I went home. So I was prepared for that as much as you can be. Like, there's still a part of you that's like, maybe there'll be a new twist and we'll make fire at 5 or something. Like, like there's always a little part of you that's like, maybe my journey's not over. But as I was walking out, I was like, I had a good run. I did better than I thought. I thought I would be the first one out and be so bad at everything. And while I was still bad at lots of stuff, I was not the first one out, which no disrespect to John, he is brilliant. So that was more of a fluke than anything. But yeah, I was walking away feeling like, what a fun adventure. And I tried my best and I'm proud of that.
Well, absolutely. That's great to hear. Had someone tipped you off, or was it just a sense?
Uh, Basically everyone had told me what was happening. Like the same thing we did for Rachel, but my idol was fake. So yeah, didn't work out as well for me as it worked out for her in 6.
When you have that conversation with Teeny and you sit down with them and you say, yes, it is fake, was that you coming clean or trying to double bluff and you didn't want them to believe that?
That was a coming clean situation. I did not have a strategy up my sleeve because I did not foresee that. I did not think that Sam was going to turn on me and then Teeny confronting me. It was a very long conversation with a lot of emotion. And so Teeny's social game is second to none. And we had a really close bond. So that was Genevieve, the person, just wanting Teeny not to feel so horrible and bamboozled and explaining where I was. And then trying to pivot to, but let's take out Sue. Then for sure, even with Sam, I tried after he turned on me, be like, but let's take out Sue, not knowing that Sue had an idol. But then I was like, but then you guys are guaranteed to be there. Like Rachel and I won't want to sit next to each other. Like we've got this rivalry. So like you guys will for sure be in final tribal if we take out Sue tonight. So maybe vote for Sue instead of me, or vote for Sam instead of me, or vote for anybody instead of me. But it didn't work.
So you were surprised that Sam turned on you and exposed that the idol was fake. What was that relationship like at the Final Five, knowing that the two of you, were not in the majority anymore?
I was optimistic we could still use this fake idol to scare people enough to not know where to put votes and to try and work with us. Like someone like a Teeny or a Sue who wasn't safe to try and target the other. I think what made it difficult is that Sue had an idol that we didn't know about. So basically everyone was safe except for me, Sam, or Teeny. And so it changes the motivations or what people are like scared to do or willing to do. But yeah, I was hoping we could use the idol to scare them and keep both of us safe. But he had a different vision.
I feel like this
Fair
episode.
enough, which I should say, very fair enough. Like everyone is playing for their own million. Sam owes me nothing, and he's an incredible ally. So
Yeah,
I was devastated, but I totally get it. And he's such an amazing person. So,
yeah,
no.
totally. You know as well as anyone, you got to do what you have to do for your own game. You made a lot of powerful decisions throughout the game to advance yourself. And I really feel like this episode was such an encapsulation of your dynamic with Teeny throughout the game, which was pretty tenuous. There was a lot of trust and distrust. How do you look back on navigating that?
With Teeny in particular, it was tough because Teeny very quickly, I don't know how they like Teeny's social game truly second to none. I don't know how they did it, but like they made me feel like they were a real life friend in a way that like transcended the game. And so the rules that I could, ascribe to everyone else in the game seemed to not apply to Teeny. And we would have these like explosive moments, but then also like maybe not shown as much was like these really high points or like bonding moments. So Teeny does feel like a family member. And it's kind of one of those situations where like, I can make fun of my sibling, but like, don't you dare, because I would protect them against you, but I'm gonna like do bad. So yeah, and there were a bunch of pivot points where vote could have gone either way and Teeny would keep me safe. So it's just such a complicated relationship, but that's Survivor. And it's hard to plan for all of that. Like I couldn't fit everybody in the box that I wanted to. They're amazing. They're amazing players.
And you were really candid about that throughout the season, how your ideas about relationships in a strategic game evolved, that it's a double-edged sword to get close to people as much as it is to push them and keep them at a distance. Looking back, how have your thoughts on that evolved now? Where do you think you stand on that internal debate?
Well, I wish I was one of the people who could balance it like beautifully. I think the best survivor players can have those connections and see clearly and do what needs to be done. I kind of can only have one or the other. Like I can either see really clearly and keep everybody at arm's length, and that helps me like perceive things a little more objectively, see things for what's happening. Or I can be really close with them and think everybody's my best friend and they'll never turn on me. And then I have some major blind spots and I'm unprepared when they do. The sweet spot in between, I don't know. Ask someone better at Survivor than me, because I do not have a good answer for that. It's hard. And I think the best people can find that balance. And I just never could.
Yeah, it's easy to live in one box, it's easy to live in another, but the gray area, that's a hard space to navigate.
Yeah.
And that's what makes the game of Survivor so interesting. It seems like the Keyshawn vote was one that you like kept coming back to, and his reaction to the blind side. Have you guys had a chance to talk? What was that conversation like?
Yes. After the game, um, it it was strained. I think it's fine now, but it's interesting because some people I think really like it feels so personal because it's their dream. It really is very personal to them. And some people play it like it's a game. I understand everyone's out for their own million. And then there's like all the shades of gray in between those two. And so you never really know how people are gonna take it. But I feel like whenever the game is over, everyone is entitled to like, re-meet and meet each other for who they are. But yeah, it's tough. It's a tough game with a lot at stake. So I understand why people feel burned or hurt when it doesn't go the way they want.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, if you had made it to one of those final three chairs, what would have been your pitch to the jury as to why you deserve the million?
Oh, that's a good question. And I never got there, so I never thought about it, which is interesting because before we're heading out, so there is a psychologist that helps you as part of the process, and the advice was picture yourself in final tribal, and I was like, absolutely not. I will never picture myself in final tribal because like I just, I don't want to get my hopes up and then feel so devastated. So I was like, I'll take it one day at a time, which is very anti-planner. Like there's the planner in me who wants to like, ask me my 30-year plan and I can answer you that. But for final tribal, my pitch would have been like, look at all the things I did by myself. Here is my emotional journey to explain why, I was closed off to you guys. It was nothing personal. And here's all the ways I think I exhibited control and shaped season 47 and why I think I'd be a good representative to win our season. Would be broad strokes, what I would want to say. But I'd also be so nervous. So I don't know if it would come out of my mouth properly. I get really frazzled when I'm nervous.
Was there a strategic move that you were most proud of looking back that you would have most wanted to highlight?
As much as it tore me up emotionally, I think the Keyshawn move was like one of the catalysts for the trajectory for the rest of my game, which ultimately led me to a pretty successful place and set me up pretty well. I think if I don't mobilize and just go with his plan in that vote, I go out a lot sooner. So I think that was the right time to wake up and do something, even though it was a bit of a risk. And there were a couple of ways that could have gone wrong with the like Roman Sol of it all. But I think that's the one that if I look back and if I had done that differently, things would have gone worse for me long term.
The Sol vote also, you had a big hand in, and it kind of cemented you as a threat in the eyes of everyone else. What was it like to come back from that and try to lower your threat level again? Was it a challenge?
The most challenging part about the Sol vote was the teeny aftermath. Everything else was pretty manageable. Like you saw in the episode, Gabe being like, yeah, it's all her, and Andy being like, yeah, it's all her, which pretty transparent what they're doing, just being like, and she's next, right? But they were still like Gabe, Kyle, and Sam were such big targets. I thought it was the right time because I didn't want Saul to like get more of a foothold in the tribe, and he was not a number working with me long term. But also it was a good time because there was still like a full deck of cards with so many other threat face cards that like you add me and there's like a little threat queen, but there's still like all these kings standing out. And so I thought it was the right time. And in New Era, like we don't want to be threats, but like you can manage it. It's manageable, at least till 5.
For sure. Another big thing you were part of was Operation Italy. What was your perspective on that? What was the trickiest part for you to pull off in your act?
Operation Italy was wonderful. The guys were both excellent people to collaborate with. Sam had laid some groundwork there. I was really nervous to work with Andy. Andy like really sketched me out in the game. He was just like unpredictable, clearly very clever. And I just never like trusted what he was going to do. But Sam had built up so much goodwill with me. I preferred, if we're going to try and target for someone for a flip, let's target Teeny. Sam preferred Andy, and then like crafted this beautiful environment. Andy comes like ready to make a move. He's thought about it. It's like one of those rare moments in Survivor where the stars align and you're like, you want to do what I want to do, which what he wants to do, and we all want to do it. Okay, great. It was so much fun. And we stayed up late into the night, like planning down to every detail. We'd like practice run some conversations and like what POV everybody had to have, because it wasn't the same narrative across 3 people. So the planner and me like loved it. It was one of my favorite nights. And we got past it. And so that was really good. But my role, the hardest part, the fake idol, because it's such like a gimmick to do a fake idol, and it's really hard to like pull it off organically. And like I felt like it's such a shtick, which is not my like preferred strategic approach, but it was able to be woven in very organically into that scenario, so it worked. But I had big concerns the whole way. I was like, this idol, people aren't gonna buy it. Andy is like so sketchy. This might just be like he's given this like old dog or last good day before he votes me out of the game. Like I was so afraid of that one the whole time. I was just afraid the whole time. Every day I was out there, I was very afraid. But it was a fun one.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely a fun one. I love that you made so many different contingency plans while you were at the overnight. What's one of the versions of reality that we could have seen? What was one of those contingency plans like, oh, if this happens, this is what we're going to do, that you're like, oh, that would have been fun to try to pull off if it had gone that way?
Well, we had like little code words and like meeting places and permutations of like the 3 of us can't be seen, but Sam and Genevieve can be seen. And so the big thing was we were prepared, and I think the code words was going to be like that mushroom pasta is really good or something like that. And that was going to be, Andy would say that if the split wasn't going the way we wanted, and then we would have to like meet up in these like specific orders and at different times spaced out to like talk through what the contingency plan, and then like I forget the telephone game of it all. But it could have also been Teeny there. I think Andy would say not because they were close. But there's a world in which maybe it's Teeny. But Caroline was just such a brilliant player, scary target, tight with Sue. So many reasons why Caroline was a great second alternative if Rachel was unavailable. We were gonna do Sue just so we could call it tiramisu or like something like that. But then we're like, well, that's not really what we want to do. So like there was the branding. We spent like at least an hour on the branding of the move, which maybe wasn't the best use of our time, but it was really fun. It was really fun.
Imagine Sue's like, why did you vote me on? You're like, the pun. We had to do it.
The pun of it all. Like we had to do it for the pun. Sue, I'm so sorry. I hope you understand. No, she's amazing. She's a tough cookie. But yeah.
If you had a chance to play again in a future season and get that second chance, what energy would you be bringing into that? Is there anything that you would adapt about your game?
I think I would try and just be myself, which for better or worse. But I think in seasons where like people have played before, I think everyone sort of understands like it is just a game and it's not like personal, and we're not all horrible people if you have to vote somebody out. So I would try and just be myself and be accountable, but I wouldn't expect as many like tears and fights over it, which maybe would make it easier. I don't know. I don't really have a good answer for that. I haven't figured it out. If you figured out, tell me how to win Survivor. And then I'll do that. Okay, Sophie. That'd be really great.
I don't know. That's why I'm asking the question.
I don't know either. Where's the blind leading the blind here? I don't know.